There are certain places on Earth that seem to absorb the pain and suffering that occurs within their walls. They become saturated with sorrow, fear, and despair. And nowhere is this more true than in the abandoned hospital. These were places built with the intention of healing, of mending broken bodies and minds. But for many, they became places of confinement, agony, and ultimately, death. When the living finally depart, when the doctors, nurses, and patients are all gone, and the buildings are left to decay, the silence that falls is never truly empty. The peeling paint, the rusting medical equipment, the long, dark corridors, they all hold memories. The very air can feel heavy with the echoes of past traumas. These institutions, once monuments to medicine, now stand as monuments to misery. They are magnets for the paranormal, places where the veil between our world and the next is worn thin, shredded by a history of intense human emotion. Tonight, we are not just exploring abandoned buildings. We are taking a guided tour through 4 of America's most haunted hospitals, walking the halls where the patients may have checked out, but their spirits have never left. Our first stop takes us to Louisville, Kentucky, to a place that looms over the city like a Gothic tombstone, Waverly Hills Sanatorium. In the early 20th century, a terrifying epidemic known as the White Plague, tuberculosis, was ravaging the country. Waverly Hills was built as a state-of-the-art facility to combat this disease, a beacon of hope for thousands of afflicted souls. But in an era before antibiotics, tuberculosis was often a death sentence. The hope that filled these halls quickly curdled into despair. It's estimated that over the decades, tens of thousands of people died within these walls. The sheer volume of death became a logistical problem. To keep morale up, the staff couldn't be seen wheeling bodies past the other patients. So, they devised a chilling solution. A 500-foot-long tunnel, originally built for supplies, was converted into a chute for the dead. This body chute, as it's now known, became a grim conveyor belt of the deceased, secretly funneling them from the hospital to the waiting hearses below. Today, paranormal investigators and visitors report that this dark, sloping tunnel is one of the most active areas on the property. People hear disembodied voices whispering, "Let me out," feel unseen hands grabbing at their clothes, and see fleeting, dark shapes darting in the shadows. And if the spirits of the dead are still trying to escape their final, undignified journey. But the horror of Waverly Hills isn't confined to the tunnel. On the 5th floor, which housed the mentally ill tuberculosis patients, lies room 502. The legends surrounding this room are dark and contested. But the most prominent tells of a nurse who, in 1928, discovered she was pregnant out of wedlock and, overcome with shame and despair, took her own life in this room. Another story speaks of a different nurse who leaped from the window of the same room years later. Whether these stories are fact or folklore, the room itself is said to be a vortex of paranormal energy. Visitors report seeing a shadowy figure of a woman standing in the window, hearing a voice command them to get out, and feeling an overwhelming sense of sadness and dread. Perhaps the most famous spirit at Waverly is that of a young boy named Timmy. He is said to be the ghost of a child who died in the sanatorium. Visitors often bring balls and toys, leaving them in the hallways of the children's ward. On countless occasions, people have witnessed balls rolling across the floor on their own, seemingly pushed by an unseen hand. EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena, have captured the faint sound of a child's laughter in response. Waverly Hills is not just a haunted building. It's a massive, sprawling archive of human suffering, a place where the echoes of thousands of last breaths still hang in the cold, stagnant air. From a hospital for the body, we now journey to one for the mind. In Weston, West Virginia, stands the colossal Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. This imposing stone structure is the largest hand-cut stone masonry building in North America, a testament to the Kirkbride plan, an architectural theory that believed large, airy, sunlit buildings could help heal the mentally ill. It opened in the 1860s with noble intentions, a sanctuary for those with troubled minds. But like so many asylums of its time, it devolved into a place of unimaginable horror. Designed to comfortably house 250 patients, by the 1950s, it was crammed with over 2,400 souls. The overcrowding was catastrophic. Conditions became unsanitary, violent, and inhumane. Patients were often left in filth, chained to walls, or locked in cages. The asylum became a warehouse for the unwanted, and the treatments were barbaric. It was a primary site for one of the most brutal procedures in medical history, the ice pick lobotomy. Thousands of patients were subjected to this horrific operation, which involved hammering a long, sharp instrument through the eye socket to sever connections in the brain's frontal lobe, leaving them docile, compliant, and often little more than empty shells of their former selves. Today, the asylum is a hotbed of paranormal activity, and many believe the spirits of these mistreated patients still roam the decaying wards, filled with rage and confusion. The lobotomy ward itself is said to be one of the most active areas. Investigators report seeing full-bodied apparitions of former patients wandering aimlessly, hearing blood-curdling screams echoing from the empty operating theater, and capturing EVPs of voices crying out in pain. One of the most frequently encountered spirits is that of a young girl named Lily. Her story is tragic. She is believed to have been born to a patient in the asylum and spent her entire short, sad life within its walls. She is often seen in what was once the children's ward, a small, playful spirit in a place of immense darkness. People hear her laughing, feel her tugging on their shirts, and have seen balls and marbles move on their own when they ask her to play. She is a reminder that among the tortured and the violent spirits, there are also the innocent souls who were trapped here. The asylum also has a violent history tied to the Civil War. It was used as a post for Union soldiers, and skirmishes occurred on its grounds. Many visitors and guides have reported seeing the apparitions of soldiers in uniform, still patrolling the long, dark corridors, forever bound to their duty. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is a place where the pain was so immense, it fractured not only the minds of its patients, but perhaps the very fabric of reality itself. Next, we travel to Spring City, Pennsylvania, to a location whose real-life horror is a matter of historical record, Pennhurst State School and Hospital. Opened in 1908, it was officially designated the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. From its very inception, Pennhurst was less a hospital and more a dumping ground for anyone society deemed unfit: children with physical and mental disabilities, immigrants, orphans, and criminals. For decades, what happened behind its closed doors was a closely guarded secret. That secret was blown wide open in 1968, when a local news reporter, Bill Baldini, released a groundbreaking television expose titled "Suffer the Little Children." The footage he captured was horrifying. It showed adult and child patients, many of them naked, rocking back and forth in empty rooms. It showed individuals chained to cribs, living in their own waste. It exposed a culture of systemic neglect and brutal abuse, where patients were beaten, drugged, were left to languish with no education, no therapy, were no hope. The report shocked the nation and eventually led to Pennhurst's closure in 1987. But the evil that was perpetrated at Pennhurst did not leave when the doors were locked. The buildings are said to be haunted by the tormented spirits of those who suffered and died there. Unlike other locations where the hauntings can be sorrowful or residual, the activity at Pennhurst is often reported as aggressive and malevolent, as if the anger and pain of the former patients have festered into something dark and violent. The most feared building on the campus is the Mayflower Building, which housed the most aggressive and severely disabled patients. Paranormal teams and visitors who enter this building report being pushed, scratched, and shoved by unseen forces. Objects are thrown across rooms with violent force, loud bangs and crashes erupt from empty floors. And disembodied voices are heard yelling, threatening, and screaming in agony. It is as if the spirits are lashing out at any living person who dares to enter their place of torment. A network of underground tunnels connects the various buildings on the campus, used to transport patients and supplies. These dark, claustrophobic corridors are another hotspot of paranormal activity. People report seeing dark, humanoid figures darting between doorways, hearing guttural growls that seem to come from all directions, and experiencing the terrifying feeling of being followed or hunted. Pennhurst is a chilling testament to the fact that the greatest monsters are often human, and the ghosts they create are the most terrifying of all. Our final destination is perhaps the most architecturally intimidating and historically cursed location on our list: Danvers State Hospital in Massachusetts. This sprawling Gothic asylum, with its iconic bat wing-style towers, looked like something torn from the pages of a horror novel. In fact, it's widely believed to have been H.P. Lovecraft's inspiration for the fictional Arkham Asylum. But the hospital's dark history began long before the first brick was laid. The asylum was built on Hathorn Hill, land that was once owned by John Hathorn, one of the most infamous and unrepentant judges of the Salem witch trials. The very ground, it seems, was tainted by injustice and suffering from the start. When the hospital opened in 1878, it followed the familiar, tragic arc of so many others. It began as a progressive institution but quickly descended into a nightmare of overcrowding, neglect, and inhumane treatments, including shock therapy, hydrotherapy, and lobotomies. It became a place where people didn't go to get well, they went to be forgotten. The hospital was largely demolished in the 2000s to make way for an apartment complex. But the spirits of Danvers are said to remain. During the demolition and construction, workers reported a host of paranormal activity, tools disappearing and reappearing in strange places, equipment malfunctioning without cause, and the constant, unnerving feeling of being watched by unseen eyes from the remaining structures. The most terrifying legends of Danvers are associated with the extensive network of tunnels that ran beneath the asylum, connecting the wards and leading to the morgue and the on-site cemetery, where thousands of patients were buried in unmarked graves. These tunnels were the final route for the dead, and their energy is said to be profoundly dark. People who have explored them report sudden, inexplicable drops in temperature, hearing moans and whispers, and seeing shadow figures lurking just beyond the beam of their flashlights. Even today, residents of the new apartments built on the grounds report strange occurrences, disembodied voices, doors opening and closing on their own, and apparitions of former patients appearing in their homes. It's as if the psychic scar on the land is too deep to ever fully heal. Danvers State Hospital is a terrifying example of how layers of tragedy, from the witch trials to the horrors of the asylum, can create a place so profoundly haunted that its ghosts refuse to be evicted. Waverly Hills, Trans-Allegheny, Pennhurst, Danvers. These are more than just abandoned buildings. They are silent, decaying witnesses to a history of pain we are often too quick to forget. They stand as grim reminders that the methods we once used to treat our most vulnerable were often sources of immense terror. The thousands of souls who lived and died within these walls left an indelible energy behind, a psychic stain that time itself cannot wash away. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it's impossible to walk these corridors without feeling the crushing weight of their history. The stories, the whispers, the shadows, are they the spirits of the dead, forever trapped in their place of suffering? Or are they simply the powerful, lingering echoes of human emotion, imprinted on the very fabric of the location? Perhaps there's no difference. For in these dark, silent places, the past is never truly dead. It's waiting, listening, and sometimes it reaches out from the shadows to remind us that it's still here,